Welcome to this explainer. It's actually kind of crazy. Most students will literally spend more time meticulously planning out their weekend activities than they do designing their entire academic semester. It's a startling reality, right? But today, we're taking a really fascinating, deep look at the art and the science of goal setting for school students. And look, we aren't just going to talk about writing down a wish list of A's and B's and crossing our fingers. No way. Instead, we're exploring how students can deliberately, structurally, and meticulously design their own success. We're going to completely flip how we view the academic journey, shifting away from this passive, let's say what happens experience, and moving toward a masterfully planned construction project. So get ready to rethink exactly what it takes to succeed in the classroom.
To kick things off, let me pose this intriguing question to you. What is the fundamental psychological and practical difference between a dreamer and an achiever? I mean, we all know students with massive potential, right? Brilliantly bright minds, incredibly big dreams. But why do some of those exact students hit the absolute pinnacle of academic success while others just kind of drift, always falling short of what they're truly capable of? Well, the answer actually doesn't lie in their inherent natural intelligence. It's entirely in how they structure their ambitions. See, a dreamer has unfocused potential, which honestly usually just leads to a constant, underlying hum of anxiety. They know they can do better, but they just don't know how to channel that energy. An achiever, on the other hand, possesses a deliberate, structured plan. And that structure provides this quiet, resilient confidence. They aren't just hoping to do well, they've mapped out exactly how they're going to do it.
Think about it like this. Imagine a massive pile of scattered bricks just sitting in an empty lot. Sure, a single brick is a highly useful building material. And in the academic world, reading a textbook or highlighting a few notes, that's your brick. It's a useful activity. But no matter how hard you stare at them or how much you wish it to be true, those scattered bricks are never going to spontaneously organize themselves into a highly functional, stable building. Now, contrast that with strategic goal setting. That is like constructing a meticulously designed skyscraper. Just like a chaotic pile of bricks isn't a building, aimless, random studying isn't a strategy. It's just exhausting busywork. The real magic happens when we organize those raw materials, those individual study sessions, with an overarching structural purpose. Okay, so here's the blueprint we'll be following today. First, becoming architects of achievement. Second, drafting the master blueprint. Third, strategies for solid foundations. Fourth, scaffolding through academic challenges. And finally, reaching the final heights. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. Becoming Architects of Achievement.
To really grasp our core concept today, we've got to elevate the idea of goal setting way past a simple to-do list. Goal setting is the profound act of becoming an architect of achievement. Think about what a passive student looks like. Actually, we've probably all been there or seen it, right? The student who vaguely reads a chapter, arbitrarily highlights half the page in blinding yellow marker, shows up to class and just kind of hopes some of that information magically sticks in their brain before the test. But an architect operates completely differently. An architect doesn't just show up to a vacant lot and hope a building appears. They actively design it. They account for the specific environment, the quality of the materials, the time frame, and the exact intended outcome. For student, this means entirely rejecting the idea of passively experiencing their education. It means stepping up into this deeply empowering active role as the primary designer of their own mind.
Moving on to Section 2, drafting the master blueprint.
So, once you adopt that mindset of an architect, you actually need a plan. And the absolute most crucial point here is that academic achievement requires a strict, chronological process, much like the step-by-step phases of construction. You literally cannot skip straight to decorating the top floor penthouse. Step 1 is to draft the blueprint. This is the vital conceptualization phase where the ultimate specific goal is decided. Step 2 is laying the foundation, establishing your daily routines and assessing your baseline knowledge. And step 3 is building the scaffolding, creating those robust support structures that'll hold you up when the academic workload gets unbearably heavy. Trying to skip these steps? Total recipe for disaster. Frankly, trying to build scaffolding before you even have a blueprint is exactly how you end up pulling a panicked, caffeine-fueled all-nighter for a massive test you didn't even realize was happening. Sequence absolutely matters.
Which brings us to Section 3, strategies for solid foundations.
Every great towering structure needs a highly stable base, right? Without it, the very first storm that rolls in is going to completely knock it over. And in academia, that storm is usually the first major exam or complex essay of the semester. What's so profound about this concept is the heavy emphasis on intentional strategy over mere chance. Achievement is not a lucky accident. It's not something that mysteriously just happens to a student because they're naturally gifted or intrinsically smarter. It requires a deliberate blueprint. And when a student truly internalizes this fact, it completely changes their psychological relationship with their grades. A bad grade suddenly isn't this devastating reflection of their self-worth or intelligence. Instead, a bad grade is just a minor flaw in the blueprint. It's a small crack in the foundation that can be objectively analyzed, addressed, and repaired for next time. It literally takes the shame out of failure and replaces it with actionable data. Let's break down the exact strategies students can use to lay this essential groundwork. First, establish realistic academic baselines. You have to survey the land before you pour concrete. What does an honest assessment actually look like? It means looking at your past performance in a subject without making excuses. If you struggled with algebra, you've got to acknowledge that baseline before diving headfirst into calculus. No wishful thinking, just clear-eyed reality. Second, identify specific actionable targets. A goal of, I want to do better, is totally useless. It's way too vague to act on. But saying, I will complete 20 practice geometry problems every Tuesday and Thursday to raise my math grade by 1 letter, now that is a specific, actionable target. Finally, gather your necessary learning materials. An architect needs specific grades of steel and glass. A student needs to meticulously review their syllabus, get the proper textbooks before week 1, and establish a quiet, dedicated, distraction-free environment to work in. Let's jump into Section 4, Scaffolding Through Academic Challenges. As our academic building goes up, the higher it gets, the harder the wind blows. The workload invariably increases, the concepts get infinitely tougher, and severe mental exhaustion definitely sets in. So, let's look at how goal-setting strategies have to dynamically adapt over the course of a school term. In week 1, you're in the design phase. Everything feels incredibly fresh, motivation is naturally sky-high, and your shiny new blueprint is drawn. But then, you hit the midterm slump, which we call the reinforcement phase. This is a highly relatable, universally difficult time. That initial superficial motivation completely fades, the actual crushing weight of the accumulated work hits you. This is where the structure is brutally tested, and sadly, this is precisely when the majority of students abandon their initial goals. Finally, finals week is the realization phase, where the building either stands tall or crumbles under the ultimate pressure. To survive that deeply exhausting reinforcement phase at midterms, motivation is not enough. You absolutely need scaffolding. Just as a physical building under construction requires temporary metal scaffolding to support the workers and raw materials, a student's goal requires external support systems to keep them steady when they're tired. First up, consistent study habits. These are the relentless, non-negotiable daily routines, like studying for 45 minutes right after dinner, that keep the project moving forward on the days when your motivation is absolutely zero. Second, peer support networks. This doesn't just mean having friends. It means forming targeted study groups with peers who are equally focused on achievement. They act as your structural cross-bracing, holding you accountable when you really just want to quit. And third, teacher feedback loops. This is crucial advice right here. Don't just passively ask a teacher, how am I doing after a bad grade? Engage them proactively. Go to office hours and say, can we review my specific thought process on question 4 so I can correct my methodology for next time? Regular, precise check-ins ensure your building is actually following the blueprint and passing inspection every step of the way.
And that brings us to our final section, reaching the final heights.
Imagine that incredibly powerful, immensely satisfying moment where the hard work is finally done. The semester officially ends. The blueprints, the deep foundational work, and all that heavy, exhausting scaffolding of late-night study sessions, they finally fall away. The final grades are posted. And what is left behind is pure, self-sustained academic achievement. The structure proudly stands on its own. The ultimate emotional payoff here is immense. The student gets to take a step back and look at what they have built, feeling this profound sense of independence. They know with absolute certainty that this victory wasn't a happy accident, it wasn't a stroke of luck, and it certainly wasn't unearned. It was the direct, undeniable result of them actively taking control, doing the rigorous work, and deliberately designing their own success.
Over the course of this explainer, we've navigated the entire architectural journey of academic success. We've explored shifting from a passive dreamer to an active designer, the necessity of laying brutally honest foundations, and the critical importance of building robust scaffolding to survive the inevitable storms of the semester. We've seen how transforming raw potential into towering achievement is a deliberate step-by-step process. But, understanding the architecture of success is really only the very beginning of the journey. The real magic, the actual transformation, only happens when you finally pick up the pencil yourself. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative challenge to reflect on. What blueprint will you draw tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me today, and happy building.